Hi there, this is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, and welcome to another episode of Double Take. Today we're going to look at the wonderful CONRAD Veidt and two films that feature Nazis. Unfortunately, CONRAD Veidt was typecast a little bit as he's played a few Nazis. So he doesn't play a Nazi in one of these, and technically he does have 3 roles in these two films, so he's only a Nazi in one of them. So we have Nazi Agent. These are on these collector's edition DVDs. Nazi Agent from 1942, directed by Jules Dassin, and Above Suspicion from 1943, directed by Richard Thorpe. So we'll start with Nazi Agent, which is probably the slightly better of the two films, even though they're both wonderful. One, if you're a CONRAD Veidt fan, and two, if you're fans of films of the 40s. So CONRAD Veidt in a dual role, so they get double the CONRAD Veidt, which is wonderful. And he plays brothers. We're introduced to the first CONRAD Veidt from behind. We don't see his face, but he has become the new German consulate in America, and his brother is also CONRAD Veidt, and he runs a bookshop, a stamp shop for rare and fancy stamps. And the German consulate, CONRAD Veidt, is working for the filthy Nazis, and he is part of the saboteur ring that's destroying shipping and things like that across the Atlantic. So he comes to the bookshop to try and recruit his brother Otto to his side, and Otto, who has become an American citizen, wants no part of him, but then realises his female employee in the bookshop is actually a sleeper agent for the filthy Nazis and CONRAD Veidt. So he begrudgingly accepts that notes will be passed in books and stamps to help the Nazis destroy military targets. Obviously you can tell them apart because one of them's got a beard and one of them doesn't. There's wonderful scenes where both CONRAD Veidts are in the same shot through cinema magic. They haven't seen each other for years, and also they've went down different paths, but in a plot device that's very similar to Be or Not to Be by Lubitsch, which was released also in 1942. The good CONRAD Veidt ends up bumping off the bad Nazi CONRAD Veidt and takes his identity. So obviously he's got to shave off his beard, which is obviously a running gag into Be or Not to Be as well. So he takes off his beard and goes under the guise of the consulate, CONRAD Veidt, who's working for the Nazis. Also, there's a relationship with a female, not the one that works at the bookshop, but one that the bad CONRAD Veidt basically ruined her life in Europe, and she's come to America. And obviously she's not a fan of CONRAD Veidt. But the thing that really, and obviously you can imagine the hijinks that ensue when there's problems and things don't go to plan, and all of a sudden Nazi agents get exposed, and there's obviously a leak somewhere, and how do we find out where the leak is, etc. But the scene that is a must-see scene in this film is when the manservant, or the butler of the bad CONRAD Veidt, realises that the good CONRAD Veidt, Otto, has taken his place. And obviously the good CONRAD Veidt thinks that the butler who served both brothers all his life has went the way of the Baron, the bad CONRAD Veidt. And it's just a beautiful scene where he exposes himself, so to speak, and the butler, or manservant essentially, says that the Baron always treated him like a servant, and Otto always treated him like a friend, and he'll help him and do anything to help him. I mean, it's actually quite moving. It's just a beautiful scene between Veidt and, sorry, I don't know the actor's name who played the butler, but it's just a beautiful scene, because again, we the audience, like Veidt, doesn't know how the butler's going to react. Is he a filthy Nazi too? But again, he's just like, this is my job to look after. It was the Baron, and then now Otto, and just the fact that he says, he's always preferred Otto, and the Baron treated him like a servant, whereas he treated him like a friend. It's actually very moving. But the rest of the film is really enjoyable. I think it's only 80 minutes. Of course, Dassin, for a lot of years, because the first Dassin film I saw was Rififi, I assumed he was Jules Dassin, and he was French, but of course he's American, so it's Jules Dassin. But this is just so watchable. Again, if you're a fan of CONRAD Veidt, you get double the Veidt, well, for a period anyway, but it's just so much fun. Veidt is wonderful as he plays a kind of innocent, wanting to be an American, and then obviously you've got Veidt, who can do the Nazi Baron probably in his sleep, but he's just so good. And then you still have those moments where Otto is trying to be a Nazi, he's trying to be tough and cold and less human, and it's just a great performance by Veidt, of course, one of the many actors and directors that we lost way too soon at the age of 50, but he's absolutely superb in this, and this should really get a Blu-ray release. I mean, it's Jules Dassin, who has a lot of his films released. It's CONRAD Veidt, and it's just wonderful. So we go to 1943's Above Suspicion, again on this collector's edition DVD without a box. This has an amazing cast. I mean, to be fair, in this one, CONRAD Veidt's probably about 4th on the billing. So it's Joan Crawford, and if you follow this channel, I do love a bit of Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford and Fred McMurray, which does seem a bit of an odd pairing. They're newlyweds, but Fred McMurray, who we're supposed to believe studied at Oxford, he is contacted on his wedding night by the Foreign Office, which seems a bit strange, to go to Paris and meet a contact who will then pass him on to a contact, who will then pass him on to a contact, who will then pass him on to a contact, who will pass him on to a contact, to try and get a professor out who has the secret of the latest Nazi secret weapon. Because obviously the Nazis didn't just have weapons, they had secret weapons. If you watch lots of documentaries, you'll realise Hitler had plans for all these bizarre weapons. We never find out what the weapon is, we never find out what the MacGuffin is, but it's a ripping yarn of a young couple, even though Joan Crawford was possibly in her 40s, who go across Europe with lots of hijinks. They meet CONRAD Veidt, who of course, because of his CONRAD Veidtness, you go, oh well, he must be a baddie, but you'll have to watch the film to find out. And we also have Basil Rathbone, also as an ex-Oxford man. Basil Rathbone even plays his role as a German with gusto, and there's also a young man who there's another subplot with. He also went to Oxford. Everybody went to Oxford, and again there's double crosses, there's escapes, there's at one point McMurray and Joan Crawford dress up as old people to escape, which is wonderful. Fred McMurray with a wonderful grey wig on. This was directed by Richard Thorpe, who the name didn't register with me, but he actually directed 140 films. He was the original director on The Wizard of Oz, which I didn't actually realise. He worked on The Wizard of Oz for 2 weeks. He was the one that decided Dorothy should have a blonde wig, but that obviously got scrapped. He directed films featuring Elvis. He did Thin Man films, he did Tarzan films, he did the Robert Taylor colour Elizabeth Taylor Ivanhoe, he did colour, the 50s, all colour and shining Prisoner of Zenda, Knights of the Round Table. So he did a bit of everything, but again he's another one of these directors that's, well, it's never really mentioned, and I had no idea who he was. Not that means anything. But again, he shoots this with gusto. Again, it's all a kind of setup we've seen before, as far as people who aren't in the spy game being thrust into the spy game and doing what they can. All the cast is wonderful. CONRAD Veidt at one point wears shorts, so you will have to calm down. It's almost like David Farrar wearing shorts, but CONRAD Veidt wears shorts. I think it might actually be lederhosen he's got on, so ladies in the audience might have to sit down. But he gets the best lines. There's some wonderful little lines, and CONRAD Veidt gets most of them quite rightly. He and Rathbone are kind of supporting players, so they're not in the film as much as obviously would like, because Joan Crawford and Fred McMurray for some reason are the headlining. But it's just so much fun. Again, it's kind of light, but then there's a couple of moments of kind of dark violence, and they do mention like concentration camps and Dachau, but again, I'm not sure in 1943 how much detail of the concentration camps people in Hollywood would actually know of. So it has at times this weird kind of, it doesn't go full screwball or anything like that, but there's a kind of lighter touch, but then you've got these dark moments as well. It is a Warner Brothers, so maybe there's a chance it actually gets a Warner Brothers Blu-ray, which would be fabulous. I mean, it's Joan Crawford, Fred McMurray, CONRAD, Veidt and Basil Rathbone. I mean, come on. Directed by the man who wanted to make Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz a blonde. So why would that not get a Blu-ray release? I'm not quite sure. But both these films, obviously, if you're a Veidt fan, as I am, these are both wonderful. Objectively, they might just be like 3-star films, but I gave them an extra star just for Veidt. Plus, NAZIS Agent, you get 2 Veidts for the price of 1, and you can't balk at that kind of offer. So thanks very much for watching this episode of Double Take of CONRAD, Veidt and the Nazis. Please let me know if you've seen NAZIS Agent or Above Suspicion. Also, there's a few films called Above Suspicion. There's plenty of films with the word suspicion in it. But these are both absolutely wonderful. But also I'm biased because I absolutely adore CONRAD Veidt. So please let me know if you've seen these films and what you think of them. And hope you'll join me again for more episodes of Double Take. This is Saul Chironin from Saul Chironin Films saying farewell.